Okay, so today's video is a little bit different. I'm actually going to be interviewing TCG player writer Kelly Locke. He's somebody I've actually known for a while, and I thought it would be really cool to get his thoughts on, what writing for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, and just kind of his relationship with the game, with the community. So yeah, this is a definitely longer form video, but I want to start doing these and maybe turn them into a segment, so let's hop into the interview. We got to start with the Yu-Gi-Oh story. How did you get into Yu-Gi-Oh? Kind of at what time was it that you got into the game, and like what was the tournament scene like? Kind of what was the metagame like? What was your personal experience like?
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. And yeah, it does feel like we've been waiting to have this conversation for a while. But as far as it comes to like me just starting off with the game, I mean, I started buying cards way, way back in the day, or I should say, had cards bought for me, way back when I
Yeah.
was just a kid. My first Yu-Gi-Oh product was that, the Kaiba starter deck, with the base Blue Eyes and that very first product, and Legend of Blue Eyes packs and all that fun stuff. Um, I picked it up from the playground, and lots of other kids had kind of gravitated towards that after Pokemon had kind of died down a little bit. At least the trading cards did. And then from there, I played very, very casually, like basically just like collecting cards, not
Yeah.
really even understanding the rules. Kind of getting into the video games a little bit here and there when they were out, and I really liked those because I didn't really have anyone else to play with. So you can sit down, you can play a game. Um, and so I played like the Game Boy Advance games quite a bit, and then there was this big period of my life, I think, from like the end of elementary school to, like through middle school and like deep into high school, that I just didn't care about Yu-Gi-Oh. Didn't really touch it. The original anime had stopped. I didn't get caught by GX, so I was kind of done with that. But I kind of got back into the game with the return of Synchros. I started playing more of the video games again, and I had those old, and I wish I had one in front of me. I had these old Pojo like card guides, and they talked about like
Oh yeah,
the
those.
game from like 2004 or maybe 2005, and they had these like lists of like these top decks. And I remember I had like one of the old Yu-Gi-Oh DS games that was set around that time period, and so I'm like looking at the guide, I'm looking at the game, and I'm thinking, I guess I could build these decks in the game and just really just trash the NPCs, right? Like the
Yeah.
computers are going to stand a chance against goat control. And it was true. And for whatever reason, that just like drove me to get back online, look at websites like Pojo, look at their card of the day, and then I'm like learning things like, oh, this card advantage thing, that sounds kind of smart. Uh, Deck building. Oh, look at these cards that are out. Like there's so much stuff now. And hey, there's this new synchro thing coming out in a couple of months. And um, one thing led to another, and I found myself on TCG Player looking at deck lists, and that's kind of where the writing side of it began.
Yeah, I so it's actually funny you mentioned that. I feel like my experience was not like all too different. I guess like I'm younger, but like I still feel like I had kind of the same path where like I played a little bit like super duper casually as a kid, got some cards, but I actually got into it around 2008 as well. Like that's so I played in like 2002 and, kid just didn't really care. It was right around 2008 when I went to my first like local card shop as like a not kid, and that was around when synchros were coming out, and kind of that was also the time when I would like read a lot online. I love reading like deck guides. I liked reading about like I found out about like card advantage and like kind of like what makes cards like better than other cards and things like that. Like I wouldn't even describe myself as like super competitive so much as just like I was trying to like learn more about the game itself. And so ironically, I did actually read TCG Player articles like long before I think I even registered what it was I was reading. Like, I don't know if anyone like can relate to this. I was just on the internet looking for anything written about Yu-Gi-Oh at all. Like it just any from anywhere. I didn't really distinguish. But I actually remember like going on TCG Player a lot just to read about like the coverage and the guides and like whatever else I could find. So, what got you started writing specifically for TCG Player?
Yeah, after I had gotten on the website, and again, like I said, I was on a bunch of different websites, checking things out, checking forums, looking at what people were posting. Um, And this was, I think, maybe even before I had started buying singles, but it was around this time that I discovered there was like a locals near me. So I was finally getting into like, okay, I'm gonna go somewhere and play against actual people. And of course, I had like a deck that was like, I had Sakuretsu armors in it and Summon Skull because I'm like, yeah, it's a one tribute that has 2500 attack. That'll win games for sure. Some of the articles that I was reading on TCG Player had like you could see like the writers, and I don't quite remember how they were done, but two of the writers were from Michigan. And this is at the time where when I was growing up, I was really big into reading GameFAQs guides.
Hmm.
Even if I didn't need to read them,
Me too. Me too.
I liked the way that the writers would present things. And I always like physical guides from like Prima Games or whatever. Like I love those like printed guides. Again, like even if I didn't need them. And I'm like reading these articles. I'm like, oh, these guys are from the same state that I'm from. I could probably I could do this, and it would be cheesy, and it would be maybe not the best stuff on the game, or the best stuff on the internet because I'm just getting back into the game. I don't know everything. I didn't know half of everything. But I ended up at the time what you could do is you could post a blog. And so there was this big blog section kind of behind the front page that you could go to. And they would take the best performing blogs or just the best blogs that they thought were out there and they would throw them on the front page. So I started this really ambitious 5-part series on plants of all things. Because we had Crossroads of Chaos was coming up. We were getting like OCG spoilers for that. So we knew there was like tons of new plant cards coming out. Um, and that really captured my interest because one of the first decks that I was planning to build was Gigaplant. And so, fast forward to me actually writing this blog on plants and then posting it, it got put on the front page. And I was very excited about that. And at the time, it was like they were actually posted to the forums, I think, and then there was like a link that was put on the front page. And so after the first one went up, I was pretty ecstatic. And so I wrote another one, and that one went to the front page. And I wrote another one, and that one, and it sort of kept going
Oh
like
God.
this.
Okay.
And so, and I was looking back, they were so bad. They were so badly written. I was making ruling mistakes everywhere because, of course, I didn't really know what I was doing. But I kept at it, and that's sort of where things began with um, writing these blogs and putting them out there. And that evolved down the line to doing things like interviews and bigger deck profiles. I interviewed someone who topped a Shonen Jump championship with Assault Mode Stardust when that had first come out. This was like, again, I think maybe before Teledad was banned, or maybe right after. I can't remember which. Again, so like 2009 era. Um, but things have definitely changed a lot since then. We're not just like posting blogs anymore, and things I think changed around 2010 to okay, well we don't have the blog system anymore, but we still want articles. Go ahead and email them to us. So I emailed them into TCG Player, and then they would get looked at, and then they would get posted from there.
Huh.
And then it took until I think 2012 for us to get like a real committed Yu-Gi-Oh side editor because of course TCG Player has the Magic side and the Pokemon side, and the Magic side has always been bigger, and I imagine always will be. They were more professionally set up for a long time before the Yu-Gi-Oh side was,
Hmm.
and finally, we had an editor come in, which of course was Jason Meyer, and you might have known him at the time from metagame.com, which was like the place that I went to a lot to read articles and coverage. But of course, metagame doesn't exist anymore, and so we kind of I don't want to say that we inherited some of those responsibilities of trying to provide written Yu-Gi-Oh content because there are plenty of other sites that are doing it as well, but we were definitely trying to fill some of that void, and getting the editor in, getting weekly columns set up. It transformed it from we were just sort of like writing whenever, and then it kind of didn't matter. It was about anything you wanted it to be okay, here's your deadlines, here are your topics, here are your columns, and basically that's been the status quo since 2012, and 10 years later here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say my first thing is I feel like we're so much more alike than I thought because I was a like video game guide fiend, and not like, the thing was a lot like you. Like I liked reading guides, not like even for games I was necessarily like actively playing or whatever. I just loved seeing like the information presented. Like for some reason that's so fascinating to me. Like I liked even just like how the author themselves chose to kind of present like info about a game system, especially like when it comes to maybe RPGs or like kind of strategy games that have more of like a like you have to actually kind of explain things. You can't just say, okay, like go here, grab this, and then you're good to the next level. And so I don't know. I always found that really cool. Same with Yu-Gi-Oh. I just liked reading the guides. Like I felt like I would read guides for decks I had no interest in necessarily playing, but I would just be like, okay, I wanted to read this. Like how does like what makes Dekoichi a good card, right? Like just seeing people break that down was so fascinating. And I think like when it comes to writing with Yu-Gi-Oh, you mentioned how Magic the Gathering had kind of an established infrastructure around like, articles and stuff. And I never thought about it until you mentioned it, but there is so much more like published kind of just information and like write-ups and stuff about Magic that I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh has been missing. I mean, maybe recently that's changing some, but like it always feels like Magic has like those like art, like those long books about like more abstract Magic theory and like all these things, and Yu-Gi-Oh is, I guess, lacking that. It's an interesting thing though. Like, how do you feel about the Yu-Gi-Oh versus Magic like um write up meta? We'll call it, where like there's like, do you feel like that's something that like there's like a difference in how people approach it, or maybe the audience for the two things? Like, are Yu-Gi-Oh players maybe less interested in reading writing, and that's maybe why it hasn't surfaced as much? Or what do you think?
Well, we definitely know Yu-Gi-Oh players and their relationship to reading.
Yeah,
No,
not the healthiest relationship.
um, well, at least for a TCG player, we are always kind of playing catch up with the Magic side in terms of like they're doing you know, so much more than we are. I just remember also going to there was a TCG player tournament series that we had, and the championship for that was in 2014. And myself and writer at the time, now full time YouTuber, DZeef, went down there to. I'm trying to remember where it was at. I don't even remember what city it was in. I think it was in Columbus. I could be wrong. Um, anyways, we went down there and we did coverage of the event. And it followed. It was like so. We had like it was a Magic tournament, and then they had the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. And of course, you could tell that like the Magic tournament, they had all the stops filled out for it, right? We were doing written coverage while the Magic side was doing like video coverage, and um, so at least in the sense of like the support that each game gets,
Hmm.
the Magic side is always like a few steps ahead, and it helps that the game's just older too. But as far as the writing meta, I'm not sure, just because I don't know. I don't know. I have to look at the numbers or whatever. Like I don't know. Maybe if Yu-Gi-Oh is just something that more players are watching. Like, are there any like real Magic the Gathering skits out there? I have no idea.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's actually that's a really good point. I sometimes feel like I mean, I guess I can't. I don't watch Magic the Gathering content on YouTube, so I really don't know
Mhm.
exactly what it is that's out there. Like my most exposure to it is literally like player in community college. Like, but I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh seems like it's a game where people are kind of just, I hate to say it, we really don't seem to like reading like the coverage a whole bunch. It seems like people are always so much more interested in like either getting a quick like visual of things, like I want a quick deck list, like just show me the deck list. Like I've seen this big proliferation of like, just the deck list screenshot sort of things. You see them on Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and people seem to like video content more. And while I do think that those things are good, and obviously they provide a lot of value, I sometimes feel that it does impede's like a strong word, but like I think that because people are more interested in kind of like getting the quick video fix and not always necessarily like reading about what it is that makes a deck strong or what it is that made a strategy strong or why a player made a decision they made for an event can sometimes lead to like it's like we know all the surface information, but rarely do we get to go as deep as I think that I see sometimes on like the magic side and stuff like that because I'm biased, you know, I'm a bookworm and all that stuff. I think like writing allows more depth than just sort of like a quick video of things. In some cases, I mean, you know, it can vary somewhat, but I do think like Magic seems like it's got both of those on lock, and then also they get a lot more event coverage. I think that's something too, just the raw coverage of like finals and like you know matchups and things like that. It seems like Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't get as much of it, changing somewhat these days, but it just seems like that's kind of always been the case. An interesting question I have for you actually about that too is how has the sort of writing meta for Yu-Gi-Oh changed for you in like since 2012 or you know, since you started really, but like has there been like maybe a shift in the types of content that is more popular, like getting kind of more clicks, getting more read more, and have you changed the way that you write like as a result of that?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and just to add one more thing to the
Oh yeah,
previous
sure.
discussion, when it comes to Magic, it's never like a matter of like, I wish we had what they had in terms of the writing on TCG Player. It's always, well, I'm glad that these guys are paving the road on this because now here's lessons we can learn from. Here's something that they're doing on the Magic side that we can do on the Yu-Gi-Oh side. So we're
That's
always kind of
true.
like trying to learn from them. Um, but in terms of my own writing, how that's changed over the years, things are, I mean, things are different just because the way that I interact with the game is different. So my content kind of has to change, based on the way that I engage with the game. I don't play quite as much as I used to. So a lot of my content revolves around um, like legacy topics. I'm talking about like older cards or older formats, or I'm talking about maybe like I don't like necessarily like all the connotations of the phrase cultural Yu-Gi-Oh, but I that's kind of like sometimes where I angle my content.
Oh, I get
Um,
you. Like, what's an example of that that you've done where like you kind of feel like it's content that's like what's an example of a piece of content that you feel is very more so like personal to you and your approach to the game rather than necessarily what was just the big topic at the time.
well, sure. Well, and that's been probably the biggest change in what I write is that I'm writing more things that are not focused on the things that are happening in the game right now. Like here's the top 32, here's the biggest tech card in the format, here's five really really good decks. But uh, here's an article on voice actors in Yu-Gi-Oh. Here's four old themes that probably could use some more support. Um, here are the best looking rarities. I haven't written that, but
No,
maybe someday.
yeah, that's the type of thing actually that surprisingly I find myself engaging more with too. Like, I don't know if it's I think we'll probably get into it a little bit later, but like, you know, I'm not like my interest in the game, you know, it's changed somewhat to where I also find like with the content that I'm making and just the things I'm personally like liking, I kind of enjoy like legacy information, stuff about like what card rarities look best, how like what were like favorite themes from past years that, you know, either maybe need more support or how can they maybe be adapted to still work and still be exciting in, you know, 2022 as opposed to like 2012. And I think that, believe it or not, and I don't know if you've noticed this on your end, it feels like there is just as big, if not in some cases, a bigger audience for some of that, um, even compared to just kind of getting this super trending like today's tournament information. Would you have you noticed that on your end at all?
Yeah, that definitely happens. And it also changes, like, there's definitely a crowd of people who come to TCG Player to look at certain audio or like certain authors. And they're looking for, okay, I know this guy writes the competitive articles and this guy writes the casual, more casual or historical things that are interesting to read, but maybe aren't going to help me win a tournament necessarily. Um, so there's always that to kind of keep in mind when it comes to thinking about like what's going to perform well and what isn't with different kinds of audiences. And of course, you spend, as every content creator knows, you spend a lot of time thinking about who is going to see the stuff that you're putting out because that
Oh yeah.
changes everything about how you're talking about it. And sometimes you don't exactly know, or maybe the people that you're going to talk to is such a wide range of players. It's everything from like the competitive person gearing up to go to a YCS event to the person who's never literally never played somebody in person. Um,
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that too, is I don't think I've ever, until becoming a content creator, quite appreciated just how wide that gap can be. Like, you know, because I've had my competitive fix where I'm like, regionals every weekend and like that sort of thing. And I sometimes can like lose sight of the fact that there are people who like have never played a person and they want to like learn more, but they genuinely like they don't know what products are coming out every single day. And like they're not following leaks and they're not like following tournament reports. They just kind of want to like, hey, here's some cool cards you can maybe look into picking up and like playing with your friends with and stuff. Would you like say that that's have you been able to kind of capture that audience through articles? I mean, I guess maybe you can tell through like comments and stuff that people leave or just things like people have to say about it on like social media.
Yeah, well, actually, recently I got a like on, I kind of like check Twitter and I see kind of where the likes are coming from and on things where I get tagged in my latest article posting. And um, every once in a while I'll get like a like from a verified account. I'll be
Oh,
like,
that's
oh, that's
always fun.
interesting. And, hey, here's a host from G4 who liked one of the articles that went out. It's not a competitive piece, it's just kind of like a casual thing. And it's like, oh, that's cool. So like I'm grabbing people who, if they play, probably not very much.
Yeah.
But I also occasionally do get replies from people who are like deep in the game, um, even on the same kinds of articles, and they often have very strong opinions. One way or the other.
Yeah, the most opinionated. Okay, so here's a fun one then. This is fun. A little bit off the beaten track, but not really. Um, there's always been this, or at least I've detected it, this sort of casual versus competitive almost debate within this community. And like, I think these days it's kind of come down a little bit, but I always feel like it's like this burning thing under the surface where people are sort of like, which is like better or worse. Like, like the casual, like, are casual players somehow like a problem and ruining things, or is like competitive players? I don't really so much want to like, I guess, take a side on it, but more so, how would you differentiate them in terms of like who it is that's kind of like reading and engaging with like the TCG player content, specifically your content? Like, do you find like a certain sort of attitude or like thing that comes maybe only from competitive types or from more casual types that's like pleasant or less pleasant or whatever?
Yeah, well, if you're engaging with Yu-Gi-Oh in any capacity online, you're probably already in the top, like the 50% of people who like Yu-Gi-Oh who are willing to broadcast that to the world. Because you'll find people in everyday life and they just they like Yu-Gi-Oh. Whether uh, you'll find it like on their personal blogs or their Tumblrs or their Twitters that they've shared something or liked something that's related to Yu-Gi-Oh. But like if you met them in the wild, you'd have no idea.
Hmm.
I've run into coworkers all over the place who'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love Yu-Gi-Oh." And really, what they're meaning is they like the characters or the cards or they watched the show growing up. But those are still people in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Um, the divide is always kind of weird. It's sort of I've always had the opinion that it's like you should just do what you want as long as you're having fun and
Yeah,
you're not
same.
ruining other people's fun. Like it's fine. Like
Yeah, I agree. I know for a lot of people that sometimes like is a point of contention just because like so when I like read comments and things, I find like it's a I agree with you. Like people just do what they want. I mean, honestly, like you can engage with this game in like 100 different ways. Like it's okay to just sort of be the guy who just collects figures or just collects old stuff or like is playing the bleeding edge meta thing or spending lots of money. It doesn't really matter a lot, but I do sometimes think that it's that last part that you said that I really think is the most important, which is just as long as you're not like impeding anyone else, I think it's usually fine, right? Like, sometimes people will get upset, like maybe with a competitive player who goes to, locals on like fun day night or whatever, fun day night, fun deck night or something, and like they're playing, whatever the top thing is. Well, obviously that's not like gonna go over well, but also like if you're a super hyper casual player and you're using like a Celtic Guardian beatdown deck and like you're playing at a regional, you can't really complain when what I mean, like when like you that doesn't go over well. So I think that tends to be like kind of where it falls for me is like do what you want, but also like don't get angry at the other side when they're just doing the thing that they want to do. So
Also, like if you're that guy who's like, look, I could go to regionals and I could play a meta deck, or I could go to regionals and I could play Celtic Guardian and have way more fun trying my best, like knowing that I am nerfing myself. Like that's fine.
yeah,
Like you make the best Celtic Guardian deck you can. Like go for it.
yeah,
And I see a tendency sometimes among the community to be like, look, if you're not playing this set of decks, you're basically throwing. It's your own fault. It's like
yeah,
so honestly, there's a huge community of people who want to win the way they want to win. Like
yeah.
sometimes it's I want to win. I just want to play a deck that I think will do the best, and that's totally fine. And there's people who are like, I'm gonna go to regionals with my favorite deck because it's my favorite deck and I like to play it, and it'd be cool to win with it. And like,
Yeah,
don't. That's fine.
it's something that I'm pretty sure we'll get into a little bit later. It's just like my new thing is almost like I want to see how far I can push a deck that isn't like the best thing, but that I like. Like that's more fun to me at least. So speaking of casual things, you have actually developed an app, TTG
Yes.
Roulette. I think it's a cleverly named app. We have used it actually in a couple of different videos. So explain this app to me and first of all, what inspired you to make it and what the process of kind of developing and refining it has been like.
Yeah. So this sort of came out of it started in early 2020. I was in full time manufacturing at the time, and COVID was coming through. And basically, we got a bunch of layoffs, which was a lot of fun. And I ended up getting like a full time layoff after a 4 week layoff. So like was off for 4 weeks, came back for like 2 weeks, and then they were like, "Yeah, we're laying off 25% of the workforce, like across the entire company, which is a huge national company, one of the biggest in the U.S." And so I was like, "Okay, well, what do I do now?" And during the first 4 weeks that I was off, I'd started exploring a bit more with Unity, which a lot of video games are built in Unity.
This is true.
It's a really cool platform, and I wanted to learn it. And I had already had the idea for TCG Roulette for a long time. Like I'd gone to the, I think it was the 2013 North American World Championship in Chicago, and they had Darren Dustin, the voice of Pegasus, come out and do the Pegasus Challenge, where you're playing the
Oh
game,
yeah.
and he'll announce a random rule, and then everybody's got to do it. And it's like whatever it is. Is it both players discard their hand? Turn player has their field destroyed. Of course, there's always a tune related one in there. And I played that a few times after that at different events. But I wanted to bring that to players everywhere. Really, I just wanted it for myself for the most part. And then I couldn't find a way to replicate it without using like three different apps because there was a lot of things that I wanted to do. I wanted to have a way to push a button to get a random rule that you could put in that would tell you to do something weird. But I wanted it to be random and I wanted it to come up at a random point. So I needed like a timer, I needed like a random number generator, I needed a way to display these things and then skip to the next one and not have to switch apps 30 different times. And eventually, I'm like, well, why don't I just try to make it? And so I learned Unity basically. I knew like a little bit of Java, and this was Unity is programmed primarily in C Sharp, which is like the Microsoft version of Java. So I kind of worked my way through it while I was unemployed, and I published it, and it worked out. And then of course you guys shared it in a video, and then again I think last year I've got like a chart of like the downloads, and there's this point where you guys shared it again in a video, and you can just see how much it just like skyrockets.
It's crazy because those videos have been so popular actually. Like it's I so again, there's this that same thing as something I had always wanted to replicate in a video. I love the Pegasus challenge. I love the idea of like random rule comes up at random time. And I our initial idea was gonna be like using like a 20D, right? You just roll the die and like we'll kind of assign rules to that. It's like a decent sort of band-aid solution. Kind of works. We just have them listed out. But what I really liked about the app was just that it's something that I can kind of like sit it just in the middle of the table, and it does the work for you. And also you can like design what the rules are, and we can like change them really easily for like the next video. It can be like an entirely different set of things. I loved it. Like I honestly thought it was loads of fun. People really enjoyed it. I think like we liked playing with it because like it adds a weird amount of tension and like stress to dueling because like you just it could happen in your turn or it could happen like just in a standby phase or something. And so I really liked that app. I think like it's a little bit of a surprise to me that like someone hadn't even like thought to do it sooner, it feels like, because I just think it turned out incredibly. I know you've also like updated kind of the interface and things a little bit as well like over the years. So by the way, for anybody who's wondering about this, I should probably mention this is an actual like app. You can download it. We will link it in the description. It lets you just literally make custom rules.
There we
Yep,
go.
exactly like that. You get to make custom rules and like just have them happen during duels. People have probably seen these videos, but yeah, it is an awesome app. I really like it. Um, okay, now for the fun stuff. This is the stuff that I think we can most of the people watching or listening will probably maybe have the strongest opinions on. Um, how do you feel about modern Yu-Gi-Oh? And I know that's a broad question, so maybe a better way to put it is there's especially in the last few years this phrase like Yugi Boomer has popped up. I don't even know where it originated. I'm like half I have half of mine to think I actually coined that phrase like once really randomly in a tweet. Like many years ago too. And like suddenly I heard people saying it more, but I don't know if I'm actually the person who like was the first. I don't know, whatever. The point is though, there's kind of this idea that like Yugi boomers are these people who are sort of like the game was better in the old days. You know, I miss when Yu-Gi-Oh was fun or when Yu-Gi-Oh was this or that. And that modern Yu-Gi-Oh is the devil. It's so awful. You know, it's ruining everything. Take us back to the good old days. And I think that that's a gross oversimplification of everything, right? Like you know, old good, new bad. How do you feel about it? Where do you stand? Feel free to get into the nuances. I would love to hear because I think that it is it's something that people don't talk about enough, at least in detail. They talk about it a lot, maybe not in detail.
Yeah, no, I really like the phrase Yugi Boomer. I think it's funny. Um, so when people kind of use it, like obviously they're memeing largely on Twitter or whatever. I always think it's funny. I always get a laugh out of it. But yeah, I mean it, and I'm not even someone who played a lot back in the day. Whenever that was like, I didn't play like a lot. I certainly didn't play in any kind of like locals or tournaments back in like 2004, 2005, anything like that. I like really got into the game as someone who was sitting down from somebody else to play duels regularly in like 2008. So I may have purchased cards back in the day, but I wasn't even playing. To me, it's so interesting because Yu-Gi-Oh is one of those games that's evolving over time, and like you can't really go back unless you agree to do custom formats. And there is clearly, clearly an audience for custom formats that talk about like things like Goat format or Edison or like old Plant Synchro formats. People are clearly hungering for playing those old formats again. There's just not really a lot of infrastructure around them. There are definitely tournaments being hosted in quite a few different places. I have some friends recently that just stopped by a tournament for GOAT format and played that. And yeah, I mean, look, there wouldn't be this kind of wistfulness for the old days of Yu-Gi-Oh if there wasn't something about it that you can't get from modern Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Which,
See, that's the thing. There's like I know that there's this yearning for the good old days, and I feel it a lot myself. What is it about these like, so-called good old days? And I know it's not like something you can like put into one sentence or whatever, but like what are the aspects of it that you feel people like so much that make it so like positively like looked back on? Because I mean, I have my hunches, but I kind of like, how do you feel about it?
yeah, part of me wonders if it's, and I try to think of my own reaction to playing things like GOAT format or like older formats. Part of it might just be a card pool thing. I think I tend to have a very negative reaction, not against the player, but when I sit down, like if I went to a locals today, I would probably play against maybe, I mean, maybe half the decks that I would play against, which I guess really isn't that many if you only play like 5 rounds. But maybe half the decks I play against would be decks where I'd have to read close to every card,
Yeah,
at least just to double check them. There's so many cards in this game now
yeah,
compared to 10 years ago. And sometimes going back to a simpler era, I think makes sense, especially if you're talking about, setting up things like GOAT format mirrors, right? Where it's like, well, both players have like identical decks. You kind of know everything's a known.
yeah,
It feels more like playing chess in a way than it does playing this kind of like your opponent has 40 to 60 cards in their deck plus the 15 in their extra. They could be anything of 10,000 cards and you have no idea what's coming out until it does, especially in like a local setting where it's just like it could be anything, man.
yeah. I know.
Um, you better be up to date on your rulings, you better be up to date on what every kind of rogue deck does. If you're not playing meta, you might be in for a slog.
Something that's interesting about that too is I think so you're 100% right, at least to me, that like the the simplicity is not really there anymore. And I'm not like saying it as like today is altogether a bad thing, but that like in your example with like goat format, for instance, you you kind of know what the common threat cards are, what the common like thing, just what things do. It doesn't feel like you're having to like read a lot. And I know today it's not even just like the quote unquote meta decks that have like long lines of text. It's kind of anything. Like with the pool of cards we have now, whether I'm playing against like Despia, right, or just like Sword Soul, those are like top decks. But even kind of the lower tier of decks just have such vast pools of cards that do so many things, and the combos and like setups and fields can get very specific to one deck. So it's like an example that's like Madolche is one, right? Where like it's not like a top tier deck, but still it's got its set of long combos, it's got its nuances, and then once it's set its board up on you, there's like four different things you kind of got to like pick up each one and like read, because this one can like protect from monster effects, and this one if they bounce then they get a search, then they get a summon if they have this, and it can kind of be so much to process. Whereas when I think of like let's say 2008 Yu-Gi-Oh, and kind of I was getting back into it, I guess like the common threat card might just be like a Book of Moon or a Bottomless Trap Hole, or just something that kind of had a pretty simple to follow effect. And so it felt more chess like when you knew simple cards, simple threats. I mean, and I'm sure, and obviously there's like more to it than that, but that's just the one thing that I definitely think is like true. But anyways, what else were you gonna add in with that? If
I think you sort of summarized the end of it. Yeah, it's definitely like carpool definitely feels like it's one of the reasons that people are going back to these old formats just to try to like simplify things down a bit. But it's also I think just like mechanical differences. Like, back in the day you didn't have things like links and pendulums and Xyz monsters, or well, depending on your format, you might. Um, but instead, you'd have things like setting monsters, which is not something that
yes,
you see a whole
it feels
lot
so old
anymore.
now. Yeah,
And like if you've never played like older Yu-Gi-Oh, you might I mean you literally might not have ever played like an actual flip effect monster its intended way
Yeah,
ever in your life. And it's very strange. Because like setting a monster used to be like a big deal. Like there
yeah.
were times where like a set monster is like kind of dangerous. And yeah, I mean
I think.
whether you think that, oh sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I think like just kind of piggybacking off of that, the the overall pace it feels is so different. Like we're talking about setting monsters, and I honestly can say like I was strongly contemplating making this into a video because something I really wanted to talk about was like just the set card meta and how that like was a thing back when I played. Like back when like the set cards could be threats like Gravekeeper's Spy, or it could be like Raiko the Lightsworn one, and like just sort of different like set cards and how like there were risks associated with them. They had high defense. They could get an advantage when flipped face up, and all these things. I feel like the pace today is quite accelerated and long, like turns can be pretty long, combos can be pretty long. It can almost make you sort of feel as though it's not even really worth like reading every card your opponent has because like it's just gonna get off the field anyway. Like the next step in the combo is gonna, okay, they summon it and you read it, but it doesn't really matter because they're just gonna link it away, and then then the next thing comes out and that link monster gets a thing and then it's gone. So it's almost kind of like why bother reading? The pace is really fast, and to its credit, I think that has made the game a lot more exhilarating. Like for a certain type of player, that can be fun. Like that kind of having your foot on the gas thing at all times. But I can see where it's like alienating, not just for like someone who maybe is yearning for the old days, but also maybe for somebody who's kind of new to it all. It it just can kind of feel like cards are flying like from hand to deck to field to grave, and like that can be a little bit overwhelming. I think sometimes people just want a chance to kind of like play the game more turn by turn, and that could be a lot of why like the legacy formats and stuff seem like they're growing in popularity now.
Yeah, and I'm not someone who's like, oh, I hate to play combo. But I do hate to watch combo videos, like combo tutorials. Not
Yeah,
because they're bad or anything. I just don't like it's to me like memorizing like a bunch of combos just it doesn't feel as fun as maybe it used to in the past because I was definitely somebody who like back in the day used to obsess about plant combos.
yeah,
Now it's like here's a 20-step tutorial on this
yeah,
new combo, and not only I mean not only do you have to learn your own combos, you got to learn all of your opponent's combos and know when to ash blossom because stopping one search effect might not help you if it's not a once per turn. You got to double check the card. Yes, it has
yeah.
4 sentences. You got to read every sentence.
And this is gonna sound really bad too, but like I think the idea of combo, like the word itself, and as it pertains to Yu-Gi-Oh, has changed. Like I think when people kind of say combo today, it really means something different. Like, because I feel like such a boomer when I say this. Back in my day, like tributing
Hmm.
Sangan for Caius the Shadow Monarch, right, was in a sense a combo. Like, not like really, but I mean, you tributed Sangan and you got Caius and you got a search, and like it's kind of one of these things where like you're getting two effects off of one thing, and that felt like a combo. And I think now the idea of a combo is kind of more akin to like just an entire line of play. Like, you know, we're talking going from step one to step 15 or something. And like that's sort of seen as a combo. And so like I don't want to say like the combos don't feel earned, but I've heard people make that accusation kind of where it's like, okay, the combos they sort of like maybe play themselves or things like that. I mean, I think that there is some depth to it, and when I do watch combo videos, I'm kind of fascinated by like the players who are coming up with this stuff because I think it's really cool. I just it kind of is a turn off to me because I don't know that I really like that much pressure to memorize it all and like have to repeat it all like within like it feels like there's a lot of pressure like to do it all in one turn on your first turn like every round of a tournament, and like the idea of messing up is catastrophic. Like if you mess this one positioning up on this link monster, or this one like kind of turn, like the order that you do something, it can literally lead to a combo ending in like nothing because like you can't summon this thing here, and then like it all goes like away. And it's kind of like I think that having that like high octane play and like the pressure that comes with it is a little overwhelming. I don't know. Like, is that maybe just me? I'm not really sure.
No, I mean, we watch some of the best players in the game do these combos in coverage for events, right? I mean, we see this at the top level, and even they sometimes get them wrong, right?
Hmm.
They sometimes you have situations where somebody makes a move they weren't supposed to make, and it's like nobody caught it because it's so complicated and
Yeah,
it's so
things moving
hard.
fast.
Yeah, imagine how many mistakes the average player is making that just in your everyday duel, people don't catch. You
Yeah,
know, they just don't know that
yeah.
it happened. They don't remember.
And there's also like there's it's just like it's kind of a thing where in addition to you having to know the combo, like you were saying earlier, your opponent has to like read the combo and like they have to read the cards, and so if you mess up, your opponent's definitely not gonna like really know that you just accidentally cheated here because like there's just like 15 different cards to read and it can just be like a lot, and so that sort of thing can happen too.
Yeah, of course, not to say that combo didn't exist like even back in the day. I mean, you still had like plenty of like big OTK combos that existed 10 years ago. And there's plenty of stuff out there to point to and be like, I mean, old school plant combos are lengthier than some combo decks today, although not many. It would definitely be on the lower end. But I mean, that kind of stuff did exist, and it was frustrating to play against at the time. And you could imagine, you know, sort of putting someone in a time capsule and bringing them up to modern Yu-Gi-Oh and showing them, okay, well, this is what a current deck can do. Sit down. You're gonna have 5 minutes of them just like throwing cards on the field and summoning this huge board. And I'm sure they would be similarly uninterested in playing that format if they weren't interested in playing against like Plant Synchro back in the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, do you think like something that I hear that comes up a lot is like kind of, Konami needs to support alt formats or like old formats, and that's something they have started doing now. So there's kind of some somewhat official kind of alt formats. I mean, like to my knowledge, they're mostly only getting played as like some YCS side events, like public events. I'm not sure how many locals are necessarily doing them. I mean, I know like locals were doing GOAT format, on their own long before Konami made like the Time Wizard thing. But um, do you think like maybe they need to could like focus more on these things to cater to these players, or do you think it's not really maybe a big enough deal to really concern like to be concerned with?
I definitely think we need a third major format in this game. Well, really a second, because let's be honest, nobody actually plays traditional.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe if you count like speed duels in there. I don't know if speed duels is just gonna like capture. I think a format where you're still playing with the master rules, but is somehow different. I almost don't care how it's different. Just make it different. Just give us like an extra outlet. Um, would be nice. And whether that's like a legacy format, I think they could do that. It would be really hard to decide on one though. And
Yeah, it'd
like I
be
said,
tough to like
there's
commit
speed duel
to
too.
the one, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I think like something that I've come around to more in recent years is oh God, I'm forgetting the one where you can only have like one of each card in your deck. Like
Oh, the Highlander.
like Highlander, yeah. I've actually started to think that there might be more merit to that than I originally thought. Like I guess it's a Magic the Gathering staple, but like for us, it kind of still feels a little weird. I mean, like some would argue Goat is kind of that, like largely. Um, I think like if Konami had to commit to one, it would be an interesting one because I think it's probably one of the most like it's one of the easiest to convey to new people. Like when I think of Konami making or like trying to support some alternate format, I think of all these logistics issues where it's like, okay, if there's a separate ban list, then obviously that means you have to convey the ban list to people, and like people are going to get confused or something. Or if it's like a time capsule format, then that means that people have to know exactly what the card pool is and like where it stopped. And some players will know that in a heartbeat. Others will be like, oh well, I played Gravekeepers, but why can't I play the new Necrovalley Throne thing that came out? So like there would be like kind of that, but I think that at least in terms of telling people what it is, just one card, one of every card per deck, could be a nice place to start. Would that still lead to a lot of, maybe the things people don't like about modern Yu-Gi-Oh today, like loads of combos and stuff? Probably still there'd be a fair amount of that. But I mean, like there would at least be like a hit inconsistency to those sorts of strategies, and I think it would still probably look a little bit slower and perhaps more methodical, at least in my head. And that's kind of where I landed as like that could be a nice thing to try out. It doesn't mean changing the card pool or like anything like that, but it just kind of is, hey, one of every card in every deck. And maybe that would work. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. The exact same things that you're talking about. It's so hard to try to communicate that stuff to players because you're gonna have people show up to a tournament and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm playing the old school format," and then they have like, I don't know, lightning storm in their main deck. I'm like, wait, this is
Yeah.
lightning vortex. So, um, and yeah, I mean, it's so much easier to do on something like Master Duel. And they've got the Limit One tournament right now, or event right now, which I played like one game of, and I got hit with a double or nothing Utopia for 10,000. So that
Yeah.
sucked. But it is definitely an interesting idea. I mean, it was kind of funny. Um, but yeah, I don't. I think deck construction rules do make more sense. Either that, or at some point, and I think we probably all understand that at some point there's going to have to be some kind of reckoning for the amount of power creep that we've had in the game. I don't know when that's going to be. I mean, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said, well, probably in the next 3 years. Now you're asking me now, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Who
don't know.
knows?
Like,
I know what you mean.
we've had like crazy broken strategies in the past that would probably mop the floor with today's decks if they were legal. So I think, considering what they're working with, I think Konami's done a pretty decent job of managing the power creep. But there is an end point, right? Like it can't just like grow forever. And
Yeah.
maybe at some point there's a mechanical change that has to come through. I don't know what it is. I don't want to say something and then have people like quote me out of context and be like, "Oh yeah, Kelly thinks that we should limit synchro or special summons to like three per turn or something like that." But
Yeah, but but you'd be surprised. Like it's that's one of those things where like I hear people saying like, okay, we need summoning sickness or we need to like limit the, and on one hand it's like, oh well, that's not gonna work because this reason or that reason. Then on the other hand, sometimes I'm like, something does have to give. It's like I don't know if that's the solution, but like Konami's got to at least be aware that there's a stigma around it. I don't know if they like prioritize it super high on like the sales charts or whatever, but it, like something that I also think about too is like I feel like the ban list, right? Like has sort of changed in utility a lot over the years where it feels like the types of cards that you see on the ban list look a little different than like what you might have seen on a ban list 10 years ago or what you might have expected 10 years ago. Not just in like power level, but like in what it is that's getting hit. Like when you look at the old band cards, they're not really like archetype cards. It's just strong staples or maybe an exploited sort of single monster. Whereas like nowadays, I kind of always get the impression that like archetypes just end up on a clock, where it's like okay, Sword Soul gets to enjoy its year of relevance, and then we're gonna hit like whatever Moye or something, right? Like just I'm throwing out a card, I'm not saying like that specifically, but and kind of like oh Drytron's got to enjoy some time, and now we're gonna hit. So it kind of feels like decks themselves have expiration dates, and that's kind of been their way of curbing the power creep, where instead of necessarily having to make outright stronger cards and strategies, we can just kind of like make a new deck that's really strong, give it its roughly 9 to 12 months or whatever in the spotlight. It kind of gets put on the list, and it allows the game to just continue without like the power creep feeling like it's too much. There's exceptions, I guess, but I sometimes think that the broader scope of things people have complaints about are outside the realm of what the ban list is actually like able to feasibly handle. I don't know if that's. I think like people might hear me say that and think like he's calling for like a burn it all to the ground approach, and not exactly. But do you ever get that impression too? Like just that the ban list is maybe a little different now than it's been in the past.
Sometimes, it's interesting because we talk about like decks that they have their time to shine and then they sort of get like rotated out, and then we have decks like Sky Strikers that seemingly like come back from the dead and are returned to their former glory, or even a deck like Burning Abyss that could still win tournaments even though it's been around for what 8 years now, a
Yeah,
long time.
going
Like,
going going on that. I think.
yeah, I yeah I because like we've done the Scorched Earth ban lists in the past, like those have happened, where we're just like, okay, we're done. Dragon Rollers, get out of here. You're gone. Teledad, you're gone. Um, of course, to only cite decks that existed way back in the day, or even like Perform Age, Performa Pals.
Yeah,
Just like obliterating that deck with a couple of lists, and um, it does. Well, I think part of it. This is going to be kind of weird, but I think part of the ban list is a little bit psychological. Like it's a little bit of like, well, if we just we'll hit this card and we'll get people to think that the deck isn't very good, and then we'll bring it back, and then people will still be like, it's still kind of mid and won't play it. It's actually still pretty good.
that's
The
true.
players don't know, and it's so hard to make any kind of definitive statements about that because like
Yeah,
I'm
but
not going to pretend like I know.
I get where you're going with that though. I've had a similar thought where sometimes it feels like it's not so much like power creep. It's just sort of people's tastes and interests can change and grow and like be maybe subtly affected by the fact that the deck got hit. But like it's still just as strong. The cards have the same objective effects that they always have had, and maybe same like outcomes. But just people kind of get bored of something, or like this is the shiny new deck. So as long as people are playing like Sword Soul or whatever, then they aren't playing like let's say Shadal Winda, right? Like just a year or two ago, that was like people were complaining about this and saying like this card's so broken, it shuts off all these summons, it's so obnoxious, hit Shadal. They never hit it, but like they just release new decks and kind of people lose a little bit of interest. But that doesn't mean that the strategy that existed before is like no better. So I think like you're right, like it's there is a bit of like a psychological effect to it where people just think a deck has kind of gotten worse and there's a shiny new thing, and so
I think that happens with individual cards too. I mean, if you remember the hype about Shard of Greed back in the day, where there was like a
yeah.
couple of weeks period where everyone was like, "Oh my God, this card might actually be really good." If they had printed that card initially as a common instead of a secret rare, would anyone have really walked away with the impression that it was secretly amazing? Or the opposite, where you have a card like Vanity's Emptiness that comes out as a common, doesn't really make any waves in that set and goes under the radar for a long time, before finally people are like, wait a minute, this is
Yeah,
really good.
it's like the perception really plays a larger role than I guess people give it credit for. Like it's there's I think in that regard I actually got to give like Konami a lot of credit where like I don't know if I call it credit, but like they can release these cards that get overlooked and then sometimes years down the line even can end up making like a really big influence, or these cards that have people screaming at the top of their lungs like ban this, this is so awful, but then maybe within a matter of months are nearly out of the conversation despite not getting any objective nerfs to the card. I think like a recent example I think of is like Zeus, right? Like I remember kind of like early 2021, kind of that period of time where people were like Zeus should be banned. And it sounds weird to say now because Zeus isn't really like showing up a lot, but that's what people were saying. Like same with Boral Sword Dragon. It's no
Never heard of
worse
that.
than it ever has been. But like at one point, people wanted these cards gone. Like Boral Sword's broken. It's too strong. It just OTKs everybody. And now it's kind of like, well, and memories are short. And I
Yeah,
mean,
I was very much of the opinion back in the day that like Saryuja Scoldred should be banned. I was like, this card
oh
is
yeah,
really
yeah.
powerful. It needs to go. It needs to go. And now I look back at that, I'm like, God, if that was only the worst problem in the format.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of fun, like in a way. Like it's. I think when I take a step back from it, I kind of enjoy the idea that like strong cards can exist and maybe end up not even actually being ban worthy. We just as players will just work it out. We'll just work through it. It'll be fine. One last example, at least for me, was like Droll and Lockbird Trickstar Reincarnation, a combo that I remember like really had people, up in arms, like just over this thing. Like it was really like this is so unfair. Like you were, banishing your opponent's like whole hand and like they get nothing. And it just felt like surely this can't like this weird almost game breaking thing like can't exist. But I mean like both cards are still at three. And have actually like have never not been at three. It's just kind of crazy to think like that all it takes maybe is just a shift in mentality, like a psychological thing to just pull players' attention away from it. And I think I think that, so going a little bit back to the whole power creep thing, I think that that's been a handy thing for Konami in a way to keep people's minds off the overall power creep level slowly going up, is because even though the power creep level is rising, this is all my theory, right? Like people are gonna think I'm crazy here, but like even if the level of power in the game is like kind of slowly going up, no one notices it too much as long as the individual cards are like switching around and like the themes are a little different each year. Now, that's not like me trying to be like a doomer and just say like it's all over for us, but that's kind of the impression I get where like people are okay with the level of power rising as long as it's just not the same deck doing it.
Yeah, no, I think that sums it up for me as well. And yeah, just to add on to that, I also very much hated that Trickstar reincarnation thing. It was so dumb.
Yeah, I was very surprised that it existed. I really was. It felt
Every time
like
it
such an
happened to me,
exploit.
so mad.
Like it just
Yeah,
didn't
it
feel like
was
it was
an
like a
exploit.
real thing, but here we are, right? These cards are both still at three, and
Incredibly. I think I made a reference to that in one of my articles where I was talking about cards coming off the ban list. I'm like, look, I understand the windups had their loop. However,
yeah,
reincarnation and drone lockbird are still at three. So if you want to play hand loops, you can go play the hand loops. I'm not, go ahead and just ban
yeah.
wind up hunter.
It's
Bring
wild.
back City.
Yeah, that's one of those cards. I'm so surprised it hasn't come back yet. I mean, there must be something in R&D that I'm not aware of, where like someone's labbed out something where like if this card comes back, it'll be. But I don't know. I mean, like it's crazy the things that we'll put up with today that like 3-4 years ago were just unthinkable, right? Like
Hmm.
it's. I don't know. Is it just like is it the power creep like kind of just gets you? It kind of consumes you a little bit and like pulls you over to the dark side where it's normalized, right? It's just like okay, well, we've dealt with hand loops and we've dealt with like loads of negates and we've dealt with these things. So, what's one more in the melting pot, right?
Right.
Like what's
Hmm.
one new? So the kind of as a quick aside, when I was playing Master Duel for the first time, and people were like spamming Rongo Miniad and all these things. I didn't while I was like okay this is definitely obnoxious. I didn't find it as obnoxious as I feel like I should have. Like I don't know if it's like the fact that Master Duel has so many different like weird legal things from the past like Rongo Miniad that are just weird and insane and like don't let you play and stuff. Maybe time has just softened my impression of these cards or I don't know what it is, but like I was annoyed at it, but I was also just like, because like VFD is legal in Master Duel, and while it's the same strong card, it doesn't feel as bad. I don't, like, I don't know. Has the power creep warped me? I don't know. It's
It's weird, yeah, for sure. Like, it almost feels like we look at cards sometimes and we're like, yeah, this card's really powerful, but I mean, it's not going to resolve anyways, right?
yeah. That's I hear that a lot actually. Like Raigeki's at three, right? I never would have thought that like Raigeki at three, right? Like if it's like coming from the age that we did, where like reading these Pojo articles about card advantage and things like that, where it's like okay, like this is a +1, so and here's why Raigeki's banned. It can be like a plus whatever. And to think that like we kind of exist in this age where Harpy's Feather Duster and like Raigeki are legal and Raigeki's at 3, like the idea that your board could be nuked would seem insane in like 2008, right? But like it's at 3, and I mean it only sees passable amounts of play, and it's mostly because of what you said, where like you don't even expect some of these things to resolve. Like, oh, you could play Raigeki, but you'd be better off playing Droplets or Dark Ruler No More or something because they can't, be responded to as easily. Whereas, like, someone, they're just going to negate the Raigeki. So it's not going to get you the same amount of mileage. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, Dark Rulers really, not Dark Rulers, sorry, Dragon Rulers really showed us that card advantage can very often take a back seat if your engine is just good enough.
Yeah.
Like you could just kind of ignore card advantage, and just pretend like it doesn't matter. If you run 4 monsters into Mirror Force, okay, they're coming back next turn. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Pendulums do that. Burning Abyss did that. To a lesser extent, Shadows did that. You know, it's it's a far cry from back in the day where like if you accidentally ran 2 monsters into a Mirror Force, it was like that
Yeah.
mattered.
That
It
meant
made a difference.
everything. So my last thing then, so going forward, what is your kind of relationship with Yu-Gi-Oh looking like? How do you sort of, I know obviously you're still writing, and obviously you still got, roulette. You said that you might be going to the National this year in Chicago. So would you say like it's all just kind of day in the office for you, just more of the same? Any other like things that you're planning on maybe changing with the articles or app development or anything like that?
Yeah, I've struggled over the last few years because like I said, I used to play regularly at locals, and I did that from like 2008 till maybe like 2000 or 20 sorry 2017 when things kind of changed for me, and it was like I couldn't get out to locals as often anymore because I was working weird shifts. I couldn't uh, dedicate the time on the weekends to go out to further out locals and try to go out there and play more. I really fell off, and I'm still trying to claw my way back from that. I mean, I'm sure it's part of just like getting older. And I'm sure I am one of many players who have gone through that in their life where it's like Yu-Gi-Oh isn't the top thing anymore, or even in the top 10 sometimes, depending how it goes. I definitely go through phases where I'm like, I'm sitting down on either like on a simulator or I've got like cards in front of me and I'm trying to like build something out. I'm trying to like lab a deck and I'm like, okay, this I can't wait to test this. I can't wait to try it out. And then I'll go like a month and like just not care. Other than, doing the writing and stuff, but like in terms of like, oh, I can't wait to go to play in a tournament, that feeling will like leave me and then I'm just do I really want to go drive all the way out there and
I
spend a whole
know.
afternoon? And it's like 5 hours. You got to play all the rounds. Um,
Yeah, I'm so similar. In like almost every aspect, I like sometimes I see like my thing that I've been doing for the past couple years, like whenever a new set comes out, I always kind of want to commit to something. Like I'm like, okay, I'll build one deck from this new set. It's not even like the best deck. Like in this most recent one, I'm just building Scareclaw. I don't really like have any particular feelings towards it. It's just kind of like, okay, I'll build this because it helps me kind of stay engaged with like each new set. I can just look forward to things and kind of build stuff. But I definitely like it comes and goes. Like sometimes I'm like I want to go on that regional grind again and like go to, regionals every weekend if I can and like do that for a couple months and like see where it takes me, see what I can do with these decks that I like. And then other times I'm just like, you know, I I'm kind of fine taking a back seat and like I'll just sort of make, content, especially because like the content I've been making isn't as like it's not like as much of like the trending hot thing. So I it's kind of lower octane and a little more relaxed for me. I can like not have to be super concerned with understanding the Sword Soul matchup to a T and like the Despia matchup to a T and whatever like Punk Synchro. I have to like know everything about it. I can just sort of relax and like sort of take it at my own pace. And I totally get what you mean about like driving out like if a regional's like 4 hours away or even if it's like anything more than like an hour or two, it's like, oh, I gotta drive there, This is going to be my entire Saturday. You know, is this? It's not that I don't want to do it, but there are also other things I could be doing. So it adds up, and yeah. So I don't know. I don't want it to end on like something like a negative note. I mean, I do still like it when I'm sitting down playing. I'm really having fun. That has not changed really for me. It's just sometimes it can the other things can get in the way.
Yeah, it's definitely a hobby that requires a surprising amount of effort for it being a card game. There's a
Yeah,
lot of investment both in time and just like getting out there and going to where people are playing. And like you said, it's great when you're playing and you're having a good time. Whether you're winning or losing, it almost doesn't matter. I think it helps primarily, and what I found myself gravitating more towards is I'd rather play with people that I know infrequently than play regularly with people that I don't know. Not because I don't like people that I don't know and I'm trying to like hide away from strangers or whatever at a tournament, but I really like the experience of playing with people who I can just like we can just have like a chat about things
I
and
know.
also be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Like
A hundred
that part's
percent.
nice.
100%. I can completely relate. I mean, I think like I'm kind of at a point where like I don't mind going to the event and like kind of playing, but I have like playing with my sort of smaller circle of friends, particularly where you can kind of I don't want to say like make like we don't make like a bunch of custom rules or something, but more like just like if I want to play against my friend's Libromancer deck, like just kind of a pure Libromancer deck against my pure Scareclaw deck or something. That's something that I can only really get like with a group of friends because once I go to locals, there's that extra element, or certainly with regionals or YCS, is that extra element of like I gotta kind of add in the staples and the hand traps and like kind of know the matchup, and it's just a level of involvement that you got to take it in doses, at least for me. So I don't know, but at any rate, this has been awesome. This has been a lot of fun. I certainly think that we have to do this again sometime. Remember,
Yeah, for sure.
everybody, if you enjoyed this, because I know I did, you can, of course, check out all of Kelly's amazing articles on TCG Player. I'll have them linked. You can also download his app, TCG Roulette. It lets you do fun, custom Yu-Gi-Oh rules that you can decide on and like have happen at different intervals. It's a great time. We've made videos on it. I'll have the download link for that in the description as well. And also, where can the people follow you? I know you got Twitter. Any other places?
Yep. I'm out on Twitter. That's where I spend most of my time. So, if you ever check out any of my articles, you can see the Twitter link. Otherwise, I'm at Silver Contrails, and that's where I post my Yu-Gi-Oh opinions for the most part.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Thank you again for taking the time. And yeah, I guess I'll see you all in the next one. Bastard.